Hello, everyone, and welcome. I will wait for another 1 or 2 minutes to give everyone the time to join this webinar. So I'll start with a small introduction. Some people are still joining, but it's not that much of a problem if they miss the introduction. Thank you all for joining this webinar, especially on such a sunny day as today. There were really a whole lot of people who registered for this event. So this can tell us in principle two things. Either AI is creating a pivotal moment in the legal industry, or many of you are concerned about the AI Act and its compliance challenges. But judging by today's turnout, I'm pretty sure that it could be the result of the two things I've just mentioned. Before my colleague Laurine will take the stage, I would like to take you through some things about the AI Act and the obligations around AI literacy. She will do that, but I would like just to reflect a second on what is happening right now. And that's something that we see at AskQ every day. Lawyers may not be known as the early adopters of technology sometimes, yet many of us are already using AI-powered legal tools. You might use them to draft communications, to redline contracts. You might use them to conduct legal research or to summarize documents. We've set up a little poll to see which of the AI tools are used in practice. That gives me, but also you, of course, an idea of the kind of tools that already are in place, but also gives you an idea of which tools everyone is using. So it's important to know before we start the seminar is that AskQ as such is not a tech provider. We don't write code, but what we do very often is help legal teams to choose the right legal tech and also to implement them effectively. So that's how we have chosen the names that you see appearing on the poll. Those are the kind of tools that we often implement with one of our clients. AI brings a lot of opportunities, but it also brings risks and challenges that legal teams must navigate carefully. And that's precisely why the European regulator stepped in with the AI Act. And a crucial part of that AI Act is really related to AI literacy. Legal professionals must learn how to use generative AI responsibly. And just as understanding the internet is fundamental today, understanding AI is becoming just as critical, especially in law. Today, I've got for you a great lineup of speakers. First, we have Laurine, who is the lead of our data protection lab. And then comes Stephaan, who is the lead of our legal operations lab. But we are also very happy that they are joined by Ruth, and Ruth is head of legal of MS Amlin, one of our clients. Each will bring a unique perspective, and we are excited to hear their insights. So today, the topic on the agenda is a very practical one. The AI Act is now live. AI literacy is part of that AI Act, and I say practical because on the one hand, it is a pressing challenge that comes from the AI Act, but AI literacy is literally one that you can start working on even today. Over the next 45 minutes, we'll take you on what could be felt as a roller coaster of emotions from the depths of despair to the heights of trust. But still, by the end of this session, I hope we will have given you some very practical takeaways on AI literacy and how to get started with it. Before I give the floor to Laurine, just a few more practical notes. This session is being recorded, so if you prefer not to be on camera, feel free to turn your camera off. The recording will be shared afterwards, immediately following this webinar. Second part, we want this to be as interactive as possible, so please feel free to share your thoughts in the chat. The chat you will find in the button at the bottom of your screen. Also, something important for the members of the EBA who have joined this call, you can get the education points by providing your name and your EBA number. We will make it very practical for you. My colleague Marie, who will also be the moderator of the chat, will leave her email address in the chat. You can simply send her an email with your name, and it's important also to mention your EBA number. As soon as you do that, we will take care of the rest and you will have your education points registered. And finally, on a bit broader level, this webinar is about the AI Act with a focus on its AI literacy requirements. Laurine will explain you all about it. AI literacy also entails that you train your staff, but it's important also to know that this training in itself is not an AI literacy training. It's a training about the requirements, but as such, not an AI literacy training. So that's it for me. I'll give the floor to Laurine.
Thanks, Dieter. All right, let's get started. First, let's take a step back. Before we start talking about AI literacy, we need to talk about the AI Act. What is this legislation about? What does it apply? Who does it apply to? And what does it mean for you? So before we get into it, I already need to drop a quick disclaimer here. This is all very new for everyone, and we don't have all the answers yet. So further guidance is expected to clarify what the expectations exactly are. So the AI Act, it's basically the first law in the world to specifically regulate artificial intelligence. It does not only set rules on how AI can be developed and placed on the market, but it also sets rules on how it can be used. And this is why it applies to all industries and to each and every one of you, basically. It has one main goal: to balance innovation with protecting fundamental rights. So if you're familiar with the GDPR, you will find that the AI Act follows a similar logic. Why? Two things. It also uses a role-based approach and a risk-based approach. First, what do I mean by role-based? As you should know by now, the GDPR assigns different responsibilities based on whether your company is a data controller or a data processor. Well, the AI Act does exactly the same, except here we're talking about providers and deployers instead. I'll explain that in a minute. The second similarity is about the risk-based approach. Just like the GDPR applies stricter rules to sensitive personal data, the AI Act sets different requirements based on the level of risk associated with different types of AI. We'll also come back to that. So in short, and that's for all of you or most of you the good news, if you understand the logic and the way of thinking of the GDPR, you're already one step ahead in understanding the AI Act. So let me first go through the different roles and clarify the who is who. The AI Act provides for a number of actors, but broadly, slides here. Broadly, most organizations will fall into one of two main categories. You will either qualify as a provider or as a deployer. Providers are the entities who are developing their own AI systems, where deployers are those using pre-existing AI systems in a professional capacity. That's the two biggest categories. Probably 80% or more of the people who join this call will fall under that second category, deployers. So as briefly introduced, your obligation will depend on where you fit in the AI ecosystem. Therefore, it's very important for you to figure out whether you are a provider or a deployer. And we often see a big misunderstanding here. A lot of people tend to think that the AI Act only applies to companies that develop AI systems, but that's not true. Yes, what is true is that providers' obligations under the AI Act are much more demanding. But the AI Act also sets rules for those who just deploy and use AI. So, well, it's very easy for me to say that the first thing you need to do is to figure out whether you're a deployer or a provider. Well, in practice, the line between those two roles isn't always clear. So to keep things simple, let's just focus on the most common scenarios. Most companies merely buy existing AI solutions from external vendors, meaning they act as a deployer. Let's take AskQ as an example. We purchase a screen's license to efficiently review the constant flow of routine contracts. While in that context, we're acting as a deployer, while Screen is a provider. All of you are probably using Copilot already, and you are in fact already then acting as deployer, while Microsoft is of course the provider in this case. That being said, more and more firms go a step further and build their own internal AI chatbots by customizing publicly available models. When doing so, they become providers themselves. So that was it for the role, but not only the distinction between deployers and providers plays a crucial role. Also, the types of AI is a very important factor in defining the obligations that apply to you under the AI Act. And one key thing to understand here is that not all AI is the same. There are some types and some uses that are more dangerous and that therefore require more scrutiny than others. And to know which are the ones that are dangerous and which are not, you first need to know what AI you're using throughout the company. That seems pretty logical, I guess. But the challenge many of our clients are facing is figuring out which AI they use and consequently which category their AI falls into. That's why we at AskQ have developed an AI scan, which is a tool aimed to facilitate the mapping and the classification of AI systems that are in place at your company. So one more topic before we start talking about AI literacy is just the distinction between the different types of AI solutions. Since we only have 45 minutes and the goal of today is to focus on AI literacy in particular, I will only discuss this briefly. But if you have any question in the meantime, you can always reach out to me in the chat or after this call if you want to discuss this in more details. So AI types. On a very basic level, and I really oversimplify here, there is a clear distinction that needs to be made between AI systems on the one hand and AI models on the other hand. AI systems are the applications or the end products that use artificial intelligence to perform tasks. Think chatbots, virtual assistants, self-driving cars, or even medical diagnosis tools. These AI systems are built upon AI models being the underlying mathematical structures that are trained to recognize patterns, perform prediction, or make decisions based on data. So, very simple, you can think of the AI model as the brain controlling the body or the engine powering the car. So we will focus today specifically on AI system because that's what most of you are probably dealing with. As I said, the AI Act takes a risk-based approach, meaning that different requirements will come into play depending on the level of risks. In other words, to make it very simple, the higher the risk, the stricter the requirements. And here the AI Act classifies AI systems into 4 levels of risks: minimal or no risk, limited risk, high risk, and unacceptable risk. Once again, I will only touch on these categories briefly, but don't hesitate to contact me or to drop questions in the chat if you want to discuss this in more details. So the only thing I really want to mention already, because it's crucial for a crucial point for today, is that AI literacy is essential for every company using AI, no matter the risk level. So it doesn't matter where you will sit in the picture I just show you, your employees need to become AI literate. That being said, let's begin with the most serious category, the unacceptable risk. Basically, some AI systems are simply too dangerous and are completely banned, no matter what safeguards are in place. This is, for example, the case for smart toys with voice assistants that could potentially encourage kids to engage in dangerous behaviors. A second category is the high-risk systems. And this is where the AI Act puts most of its focus. So AI high-risk AI systems are allowed, but they are subject to strict requirements, considering the significant impact the improper use of such system can have on people's lives. And here are a couple of examples. Think the use of automated resume screening tools to make hiring decisions, or the use of AI systems to assess whether somebody is entitled to a loan. Important to note here as well, AI systems that aim to assist in legal interpretation and application of the law are also considered high-risk AI systems. So it's important for our sector. So when dealing with high-risk AI system, once again, it's crucial to define whether you're a provider or a deployer, because the responsibilities will be very different. And I won't have the time to go in too much detail here, but to make it, again, on a broad level, provider must carry out a strict conformity assessment process before they put their system on the market. Deployers, on the other hand, must follow the provider's instruction when using such a high-risk AI system. They must have a human in the loop, and they must conduct impact assessment on data protection and fundamental rights. And believe me, from experience, that's not a small task. So let's move on to a limited risk AI system. So this system, again, are allowed, but they are subject to specific transparency obligation, the goal being to avoid the risk of misleading people. For instance, when companies provide a chatbot on their website and that chatbot is not considered to be high risk, still it must be clear to the visitors that they are interacting with an AI system and not a human. And then the last category, the minimal risk AI system, which is actually the majority. And these systems are not explicitly regulated by the AI Act. That means they can be developed and used without any additional legal obligation. But providers and deployers might choose to follow voluntary codes of conduct. Now, if you were not scared or worried before joining this course, I can imagine you probably are now, because I know there is a lot to digest and a lot to prepare for. But there is no need to panic. Though if you haven't taken any actions yet, well, it's now the time to get moving. Organizations that haven't cataloged which AI system they are using should do so as soon as possible. Such mapping is actually the first thing you need to do. Now, you might be thinking, well, I still have time. In some ways, you do. Although the AI Act entered into force in August 2024, it's true that most requirements won't be fully applicable until August 2026. But while that might seem far off, it's actually only 16 months away. So the sooner you start preparing, the better. There is also another milestone that I want to point out. It's February 2nd, 2025. Since that day, two things have changed. First, AI systems that pose an acceptable risk are now forbidden. And second, the AI literacy requirement also came into play. And this is this last requirement that we will discuss now in more detail. What exactly is AI literacy and what does the AI Act has to say about it? So here I have to apologize already in advance. I'll have to confuse you a little bit more, but I hope not for too long. And we will get into the practical things very shortly. So AI literacy. Don't worry, I will not bore you out with the articles that refer to AI literacy. You all can read. And it all boils down to actually one thing. You should take measures to ensure that your staff and anyone working with AI have a sufficient understanding of what AI is about, how it works, and what risks it presents. So let's clear things up by breaking down what the law says using the why, who, what, and when traditional questions. Let's start with why. Why does AI literacy matter? Well, the AI Act makes the importance of AI literacy very clear. It's not all about limiting the use of AI. It's about making sure we can use AI responsibly. The goal here is to maximize the benefits of AI system while still protecting the fundamental rights. So when people understand how AI works, how decisions are made, how data are used, they are less likely to fear and to distrust this technology. So again, it's not just about avoiding risks. It's also about, and mainly about, building trust. Of course, I can and I will talk about compliance, but we are talking about something way more essential here. Whether you want it or not, AI is here to stay. People will use it regardless of whether you formally allow it or not within your company. Don't think your colleague will stop using ChatGPT simply because your company policy prevents him from doing so. In my opinion, forbidding AI won't solve the issue. Instead, we need to guide, we need to educate, and we need to set clear boundaries. Second, now that we understand why literacy is so important, let's look at who is affected. And here, a bit like the GDPR, the AI literacy obligation is actually quite broad. And it refers to things I already mentioned in my introduction, but it applies to any organization developing or using AI system, regardless, and that's very important, regardless the level of risk associated with those systems. This means that your organization is caught as soon as generative AI tools such as ChatGPT are being used. And this requirement goes beyond just your internal staff. It extends to third-party too. Whether they're contractors, service provider, it's basically anyone else working on behalf of your organization that is using AI during that time. And as you can imagine, legal teams are no exception. And as far as they are concerned, they're even affected in two ways. First, they need to be AI literate, just like any other staff member, so they can understand how AI works and what the risks are involved. But in my opinion, there is more to it for them. Legal teams are probably the ones company will turn to or are already turning to when they have questions about compliance with the AI Act. So legal professionals like you and me need to be literate in both AI and the AI Act itself. So now that we've covered the why and the who, let's move on to the what. Specifically, what skills are necessary for AI literacy? For instance, if you provide training for your staff, what should that training focus on? The first thing to note here is that there is no common understanding yet of what set of competencies is needed to achieve AI literacy. In fact, very little is known at this moment about how AI literacy should translate into real-world settings. The AI Act simply says that providers and deployers must ensure a sufficient level of AI literacy, but it doesn't specify what measure an employer must take, neither define what sufficient level exactly mean. So there is no set benchmark, but that being said, when we talk about the skills and knowledge necessary for AI literacy, there are several core topics that should be covered. AI literacy is three-dimensional in the sense that three key areas need attention. One, the technology basics. What is AI and how does AI work? In a nutshell, you should know the capabilities and the limitation of the AI tools you're using. And the slides are moving themselves. Two, the legal requirements. What are your specific obligations under the AI Act? And three, the ethical consideration. What does doing the right thing look like when it comes to AI? So your staff should basically understand the potential risks and how to mitigate those risks, for example, through smart prompt engineering and human oversight. For example, when using an AI tool to analyze contracts, AI literacy means that legal professionals should be able to explain how the tool interprets contract clauses, what data the tool was trained on, and the ethical concerns that are involved. To put this into perspective, let's use a simple analogy. Think of traditional literacy. It's not just about reading words, but it's also about understanding what these words mean. Similarly, AI literacy goes beyond simply knowing how to use AI. It's about one of the most important skills nowadays, critical thinking. You need to be able to question the AI system you interact with, spot potential biases, and evaluate their impact. Looking at the slides, you must be wondering why so many beautiful triangles. No, it's not to make the slide pretty. Like I said, there are still a lot of gray zones, but one thing we do know for sure today is that AI literacy is contextual. In other words, it needs to be made concrete for your specific organizations, for the specific types of AI system you're using, and the specific risks that are involved in your case. On top of that, you also need to take the specific responsibilities of each of your teams into account. Not every employee and not every department needs the same level of knowledge. So your AI literacy triangle will look very different from the AI literacy triangle of other people in this call. So that means that a generic off-the-shelf training deck for all your staff will likely not be sufficient. You need to crack your own code. Again, we could say that the regulation is giving us some headaches, but in my opinion, it's only logical that the AI Act is preventing us from just ticking the boxes. There are big differences between departments, and I want to take HR and legal as an example. HR teams might be using AI to screen candidates or employees. They have to understand how AI affects fairness and bias. For example, they need to make sure the system is not favoring or discriminating against certain groups. For legal teams, the concerns are different. They may use AI for tasks such as contract review. And when doing that, legal professionals need to ensure the system interprets everything correctly and complies with regulation like the AI Act and the GDPR. So accuracy is a bigger concern. Now, when do you need to take action? Well, since February, as we have seen, AI literacy is no longer just a nice to have, but a legal obligation. So if you haven't trained your workforce yet, you're already late. But I also have good news today. Enforcement of the AI literacy obligation won't begin until August 2025. This is because member states have until then to designate the national competent authorities. So that gives you a bit more time to catch up. What is also important to point out here is that AI literacy is not something you can just achieve once and forget about afterwards. It remains an ongoing effort afterwards. You must be ready to regularly update your training materials and to provide periodic courses to keep up with both the AI developments and the changes in the regulations and the guidance. So this was for the theory. I hope I've managed to spark your curiosity. And now we move into the practical side of things. How does this all play out in reality? So unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, the AI Act doesn't give a clear-cut list of specific actions that companies must take to ensure AI literacy. Instead, it allows organizations to choose the best measures based on their industry and the expertise of their team. So with that in mind, and as introduced by Dieter, we will now provide a glimpse into the workshop that AskQ conducts for legal teams to help them become AI literate. This overview will give you a sense of the content we cover without diving into the full training itself. So I will now give the floor to my colleague Stephaan, who will walk us through the technical aspects that are addressed during those workshops.
Yes, thank you, Laurine. So the main technical concern around the use of generative AI especially is the risk of what is called hallucinations. And hallucinations are wrong answers or wrong output given by a Gen AI tool. And those answers often look and sound correct to an untrained eye, but are actually wrong. And the reason why those tools are often giving wrong answers is because the models were developed to sound as realistic as possible, but not necessarily to be as accurate as possible. And it's super important to keep that in mind when using generative AI tools. And there is much more to be said about hallucinations and the technical aspects of the use of AI. But the only thing that I'm going to highlight here is that even though the output of a tool looks and sounds correct, is that it might not always be the case. And I really want you to keep that in mind from this day on. And that's why, amongst other things, the technical aspects of AI are important to consider in your AI literacy journey as well, of course. And this webinar today is only a small teaser. In the screenshot on the left, for example, we asked ChatGPT under which conditions the hardship doctrine can be applied under Belgian law. And the answer looks correct, but actually some of the conditions it lists are not mentioned in the civil code in Belgium. And so ChatGPT apparently just made an amalgamation of the conditions that you find across different countries. So you would need to know what to expect of the answer to be able to use the answer, which is a bit contradictory, and why Gen AI at this time is not a great tool for legal research, for example. And the hallucination issue also applies for when web searches are performed with AI tools. You might have noticed that ChatGPT or Copilot now also allow you to search the web through their applications. And when using these features, they will again confidently give an answer and even point you to the sources or the web pages where they found the answer to your question. But that still doesn't mean that the tool what the tool says can actually be found in the source that they mention, which sounds a bit abstract, but someone tested this and checked all the sources that Copilot, ChatGPT, and a range of other tools cited when answering a question, when looking on the internet to answer that question. And as you see, you might not be able to read exactly what it says, but all the red squares are instances where the source cited didn't actually contain 100% of what ChatGPT or Copilot or the other tools said that they contained. So practically that means that even if the AI tool says that it used a certain source to formulate its answer, you still need to actually check that source, and you cannot just use the output. Fortunately, there are ways to reduce the likelihood of hallucinations, but the methods that are used are not silver bullets, because even the legal research tools of LexisNexis and Thomson Reuters that use GenAI on their own library of content hallucinate on average 1 in 4 times. So that means that you still need to be very careful with the tools that say we only use our own content to give answers to your questions. It still doesn't mean that hallucinations are completely not possible. And I'm going to leave it here for what the technical concerns are with the use of AI, but this is something that we delve in further during our workshops that we organize. And let's also be clear, it's not because you can't confidently use GenAI for legal research that it cannot be useful in other instances, because it clearly is useful. It is being used actively by legal professionals today, but mostly in other use cases.
Yeah, thanks, Stephaan. So now that we have explored shortly the technical aspects of AI, let's turn our attention to the legal and ethical considerations that come with using AI tools in the legal field. There are a few key areas to cover. Let's begin with accuracy. As we've just seen, AI can sometimes hallucinate, and this could lead to bad legal decisions or bad legal advice. So this is why you as a lawyer always need to carefully double-check any content generated by AI before you acting on it. Next, let's look at fairness. As you probably know, AI systems are only as good as the data they trained on. So if the training data is biased, the AI will reflect that bias, which can lead to unfair outcomes. One other significant challenge with AI in the legal field is transparency, and more particularly, explainability of AI systems. AI systems often operate as a black box, meaning they provide results without explaining how those results were reached. If an AI tool flags a risky contract clause, lawyers need to know why that clause was flagged and not others. Moving on to liability. Who is responsible if AI makes a mistake? If AI misses a critical clause or a critical legal precedent, should the blame fall on the lawyer, on the law firm, or the AI provider? And here is a funny story to illustrate that you may have seen on the social media. An Australian traveler recently asked ChatGPT if he needed a visa to visit Chile, and the AI said no. However, at the airport, he discovered that he actually needed one. And the reason is simple. Visa requirements for Australians changed in 2019, and ChatGPT just gave outdated information. Then that traveler asked ChatGPT if he could sue it, and the ChatGPT simply answered no. This is just a funny illustration of the point I was trying to make about liability. Another major concern is privacy and confidentiality. Generative AI tools may allow vendors to reuse the input data to refine their systems. So there is the risk that sensitive information could be unintentionally included in training datasets. And that could, of course, put client confidentiality at risk. As a rule of thumb, you should always avoid entering personal data or confidential information into generative AI tool, especially free online ones. And lastly, intellectual property also raises significant questions as well. Simply think about the ChatGPT's new image generation feature to create pictures in the distinctive Studio Ghibli style. It's been everywhere the last few days, and it raises a lot of questions regarding intellectual property. So let me be clear, I've only touched on these points very briefly, simply because this webinar is not AI literacy training. The objective of today was to show you what obligations fall under the AI Act and under the AI literacy requirements more specifically. Still, I believe both the topics you see on these slides and the technical explanation that Stephaan just did should give you a better idea of the kind of content your staff should be aware of. So again, you might feel nervous because this is all new and we all want to get it right. So to set you up for success, I'll try to walk you through a few best practices you should keep in mind. You should start by assessing your team's existing knowledge of AI. To do this, you could, for example, implement a survey or a simple questionnaire, a simple test. We have developed one ourselves. And based on the answers, you can then evaluate the baseline of AI literacy within your team and identify potential areas for improvement. I think I've repeated this enough today, I hope, but AI literacy is context dependent, meaning your training must be tailored to the specific systems and its use cases. Third, proper documentation of training efforts is key to proving compliance with the AI Act, just as for the GDPR. You should ensure that all the training activities and initiatives you're taking are well documented. This will be important should you need to demonstrate your efforts to the relevant authorities. As we already mentioned, AI is evolving very quickly and can create new opportunities, but also new risks for organizations. So it's very important to continually evaluate and refresh your training materials. Ideally, just as for the GDPR, staff should get refresher sessions at least annually. And last but not least, we need to mention that Article 4 of the AI Act calls for the implementation of measures, but nowhere does the AI Act limit these measures to training. Of course, training is key, but you can also think beyond that. You could also, for example, set up things like screensavers, pop-up reminders, or nice posters for the coffee corner. It's also a good idea to adopt an acceptable use policy to set clear rules on which AI systems may be used within your company, for which purposes, and what is permitted or prohibited when using those systems. Now, of course, we don't want you to leave nervous but confident. So we are fully aware that for many organizations, particularly those with limited in-house AI expertise, external support may be useful. At AskU, we offer tailored training programs to increase AI literacy for your legal teams. And that's what Stephaan is now going to walk us through.
Yes, we organized 3 types of workshops, from basic to more advanced. The most basic one is designed to give an introduction to important concepts surrounding AI and generative AI. During this type of workshop, we take a little technical detour before then diving into the risks, but also the opportunities that AI presents for legal professionals in particular. And we often notice that it's essential to start here because a lot of people tell us that they've been using ChatGPT for legal research, which is fine, like I already explained, but only when you know what to expect or when you check the sources that have been cited thoroughly and not just use the answers as such. The second workshop is more practical and aimed at really training legal professionals to use ChatGPT or Copilot. And there we often see that it's limited to certain use cases that people already have tried ChatGPT or Copilot with. But you can do much more than just write silly poems to your colleagues. And that's what we explored during those workshops. And then finally, the third type of workshop focused on the AI tools that were developed for the legal industry specifically. And during this one, we have a look at more advanced use cases that are only possible to do well with such tools. And those tools are already bringing a lot of value to those users today, such as for contract review based on playbooks or bulk document review in litigation or M&A context.
Up with the mic on is always better. Yeah, so training your legal team is actually not the only thing we do. Many of you are probably familiar with the work we do in data protection. Well, we've extended these services to cover AI Act compliance as well. So just as we've been mapping data flows for the last 5 years, we now also map AI systems across organizations and assess the level of risk. But the journey doesn't end there, of course. Once our assessment is complete, we also create a roadmap and help you implement the right building blocks. And last but not least, next to training, we also offer not just DPO as a service anymore, but also AI officer as a service. So you always have a dedicated expert available in case of questions or contractual matters relating to AI.
Thank you, Laurine, for sharing all that wisdom with us. Laurine is not only the guru of AskQ when it comes to data protection and AI, but some of you might know that she's also a legend in Belgian hockey. She hates when I say it, but she was the umpire of the Olympic finals in hockey. And I've been told that the hockey field is the first place where Laurine and Ruth first met, when Laurine was still a rookie and Ruth was the goalkeeper. We're very glad that Ruth joined this call. She's one of our clients. She's head of legal of MS Amlin, who is a specialty player in the world of insurance and reinsurance. And Ruth will share some thoughts with us on how she dealt with AI workshops and AI literacy. Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you, Dieter. I hope you hear me, because I had some technical issues, but I'm glad I made it in the room. Indeed, with this MS Amlin, we already worked with AskQ and with Laurine for our data privacy project we had a few years ago, and I was so happy with the work we had and the collaboration. I also wanted to go deeper, and I understood that AskQ is one of the players, or one of the sole players, that is already really deep into the legal tech. And I'm really a fan of everything what can make your life easier, but I don't have the time to dig in myself. So I was in contact with Stephaan, and we spoke a little bit what we can do. And in the meantime, I'm an adept of ChatGPT, and I already started using it in my work life, and I saw really the advantages of it. But my team, we are five. I have 5 other legal colleagues who were a little bit more hesitant than myself. And every time I said, but for this task, maybe you can use ChatGPT to help you go faster. I got a reaction of, but it's not a good quality of the results. I don't trust it. So it was really, they were really against it and not willing to use it. And so that's why I got the idea with Stephaan to make a real workshop, very practical, of 3-4 hours, with first introduction on what is AI, and also to really understand what can you expect from using ChatGPT or later on other toolings, and what is the best way. And then a second part of it was really to test it ourselves during the workshop together, and also really specifically on legal tasks that is linked for a legal team. And I have to say, because my colleagues are a little bit older than me, and they were really they were happy to get this workshop, but they were also like, we don't know. But once we had the workshop, you saw that they really changed their mind during this workshop. First of all, better understand the background of it. What is it, the kind of system, and for what kind of types of work you can use it, and how can you use it. And then by doing it with examples, they come up themselves and they ask Stephaan, maybe we can try this and that. And really seeing that if you use good, proper prompting, that you use it in the correct way. They really saw that from bad answers that they got when they did it previous to the workshop, that the quality can be really high, and it's a really big help. And after these 4 hours now, they make jokes and they say, I made this, or I did this work with the help of your best friend, and then it's they refer to ChatGPT, and I really see a switch now. Even for myself, I learned quite a lot of things, or like small things that I didn't know. I already used it a lot, but still there were quite a lot of new tips and tricks from Stephaan. And also it was the start of looking into what can we do more than just ChatGPT, and we started to dig in the different legal tech and the AI toolings specifically for legal work. And so now with Stephaan, we're trying to set up and to find the best tooling, and then also to go implement it within the company. And it's such a specialized field that, and also for a small team like ours, it's very difficult to try yourself and to find your way within all these toolings, and to have help from people who are their daily life is legal tech and toolings, and how to use it. So we're really pleased with it, and I cannot imagine anymore my work without ChatGPT. In the meanwhile, also Copilot, and I hope very soon another legal AI tool for contract review. So that's a little bit our experience, and I hope you also can take the first steps to go deeper into AI in the legal field.
Thanks a lot, Ruth, for sharing your experiences with training. I'm gonna give a bit of a context of AskQ, but I will try to do it in only 2 minutes, so that at least we have 10 minutes left for the Q&A. Maybe I can also tell that we can stay a bit longer in the call. So if other people have Q&A questions, we can answer them, and we can answer them until 12:30. So I've seen that many of the people who have joined are already clients of AskQ. Just a few words about AskQ, because Laurine has dealt with the Data Protection Lab. Data Protection Lab is one of the 3 labs that we have at AskQ. The reason why we call them labs is because apart from getting things done, of course, there's a lot of room for experimenting, a lot of room for inspiration. So that's why we prefer not to call them business units, but rather labs. So there's 3 labs. If I can see the next slide, one of them is the Data Protection Lab that has already been dealt with by Laurine. The second lab is the Contracts Lab. The Contracts Lab counts 10 people who really live and breathe contracts, we always say. So they really focus on drafting, reviewing, and negotiating contracts for our clients. So there we are like the extension of the legal team who decides to set aside a part of the contract work. And last but not least, we've got the Legal Operation Lab. It's one of the fastest growing labs that we have at AskQ. Stephaan, that you have seen, is the lab lead of that particular lab. There we deal with all things that are related to making your legal team more efficient. That includes, amongst others, selecting legal tech and implementing legal tech, but it does much more than that. We also focus on, for instance, writing out strategies for the legal teams, thinking about vision and mission of the legal teams, document management, know-how management. So the typical things that fall under legal operations, we do them almost all of them we do. And one more sentence about that, because we sometimes get the question like, how are those things related? And if we think of AskQ, we also often think about why do we exist? So what is our raison d'être? And it's really reinventing legal teams. So there is a link between the three labs, and also a link between everything we do. It is that we think that if you want to be a sustainable and future-proof legal team, you really have to start reinventing yourself, with or without AskQ. For our mission, we do it in two ways. Either we consult on how to do things differently. You could compare it to injecting oxygen and inspiration in legal teams on the one hand, but we also offload legal teams by taking over the part of the contract work or part of the data protection or AI work. There we are really the tap in the bucket that is getting under pressure. So that's a few words about AskQ. And now we are ready for the Q&A. As I said, we will stay a bit longer. So if you have time, please feel free to stay in the call. I think that I'm looking at both Stephaan and Laurine. There are already some questions in the chat. Feel free to add other questions. And I leave it up to Stephaan or Laurine to see who will start with the first question.
Yeah, I'll start by addressing the questions regarding the workshops, because there are quite some. So one person asks when the workshops are organized. We don't organize workshops centrally, let's say. We organize workshops for companies or law firms specifically. So those workshops are tailored to your company or law firm. So they're not organized on a certain date. We organize it together when that works. And somebody else asked about the price. The price for a workshop of 1.5 hours, so level 1, 2, and 3, are 1,850, which includes a multidisciplinary team, because there's a technical, legal, and ethical aspects that are discussed. We also ask for OVB points if we do it for law firms and they would be interested in having OVB points for attending those workshops. And it also often is the starting point of a longer AI strategy and AI implementation journey, such as, for example, the one that Ruth mentioned for MS Amlin. And then I think somebody also asked, is it also relevant for international teams? Yes, I gave an example that was quite Belgo-Belge, let's say, about the hardship doctrine in the civil code. But those examples, I mean, that was one example. All the rest is applicable in an international context as well. And there is very, very little that is Belgian specific, let's say. And then somebody else asked, is it also relevant, or do we do it for notary offices? We haven't done so yet, actually, but thinking about it, I think most of it is relevant for notary offices as well. There might be some use cases that are notary specific, but we'd be happy to discover those together during a workshop. That's also why the workshops are for. It's to brainstorm together and to see what you can do in general. How does that apply to your specific situation, your company, law firm, or notary office, for example?
Yeah, I will take the remaining question. So Olivier was asking if just using AI via Copilot, it's just a minimal risk. Here you have to be careful, because it's not so straightforward, the classification of AI systems, and it will also not only depend on the system itself, but also the use cases and the purpose why you're using those systems. So don't go too quick into the assumptions. It's really important to make sure these classifications is well made and then well documented, of course. Another question from Olivier about the sanction in case you're not compliant. So there, the penalty system is very similar to the one of the GDPR. So again, you see another similarity. The only difference is that the maximum penalties are much higher. So fines here can go up to 35 million euros if you're using prohibited AI system, for example. There is no direct fine involved for lack of AI literacy, but it's something that will be taken into account if there is other infringement, to make sure that the fine is high enough. So if you haven't make your workforce AI literate, you are subject to higher fines, basically. And maybe I'll also just use this question to make sure it's also clear that I mentioned it already, but it's not only about compliance with AI Act. It's really not just a tick the box exercise. There are risks that should be addressed, whether or not the AI Act was there actually. So don't only look at the sanctions. Would be my advice. I see a question about AI officer. So no, there is no mandatory appointment of AI officer as per the AI Act. But again, it probably will be a best practice for many companies to make sure that AI compliance is taken into account within the company. So there is no such thing as a mandatory or as an obligation, but clearly a best practice to have someone who knows AI and guide the compliance within the company.
I see another question from Milan Liesens. To what extent does AskQ help implement AI solutions? So we do help implement AI solutions, and usually our journey starts, like I mentioned, with those workshops, because it's important for everyone in the team, or at least those that are interested and have been mandated to look at AI tools, to be aware of what's possible and what are the limitations. And then the first step after that is usually to decide on which use cases we want to focus on. And then we're going to match those use cases with tools that are available on the market. And once that has been decided which tools should be trialed and then implemented, we're going to make a beauty contest, as we sometimes call it, to compare them and see what tool works best for the use case that the company, law firm, or maybe a notary office has in mind. And then the last step is to fine tune or to tweak the tool to the use that was envisioned, because a lot of tools allow you to save prompts or configure templates of things that the user then not always needs to configure themselves when using it. So those are all things that we do. And for contract review tools in particular, those that have looked at contract review tools might know that in some of them you need to configure your own playbooks, the set of rules that contracts need to be reviewed against. Configuring a playbook is quite important work before starting to use those tools, but it requires both legal contracting knowledge and AI prompting knowledge. That's also something that we do for our clients in the framework of implementing AI tools.
And I see, sorry, I see two more questions. Again, if you have more, please feel free to drop them. We'll make sure we either address them after this call or in a follow-up contact. Is there an authority in place that will issue fines? So as I briefly mentioned, yes, there will be national authorities that need to be appointed, and this needs to happen by August 2025. So it's yet to be seen. And there was one more about how to document AI literacy efforts. Here again, we're still working a bit in the dark. So in the sense that the AI Act is not giving a proper list of the types of documentation you need to have. But as for the GDPR, everything that can show that you've taken initiative is important. So it can be the training presentation itself, a list of people who were present at the workshop. If you've made an assessment to a small test to assess the current knowledge, you can also document that. So you can be very creative here and think outside of the box, but it's basically everything that you could put forward in case of questions or investigations.
The one thing I would like to add is that, of course, there might also be some questions that are more sensitive. There will be sent out an email immediately following this webinar, and the email address of Laurine will be in it. So please feel free to contact Laurine directly. And of course, Laurine can also consult with Stephaan on the answers. So we are nearing the end of the session. Thank you all for joining. Once again, there was a lot of people who registered for this event. We will stay online after 12, so even if only 1 or 2 or 3 people say we want to stay a bit longer and ask the questions that are more sensitive, please feel free to stay online. But many thanks to everyone for joining this webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I see we are still 24. So please feel free to ask your question in the chat if you want to. That will be the easiest, I think. And let's say that if there are no, there we have a question from Anna. Anna, thank you for asking that question, and I leave it up to Stephaan or Laurine to tackle it.
Anna is asking, is it a good practice to prohibit use of company-approved AI tool? There again, you will have to assess the risk. It's very difficult to make a clear-cut answer. It will depend of again, the type of use case you're having in front of you. But although it's true that AI literacy is only for professional use, again, awareness can also be created for using AI tools for personal use because there are risks there as well. So I wouldn't necessarily cut it too much between professional and personal. But difficult to really give a clear-cut answer. It's will all depends of the risks again.
I don't know whether anyone else still has a question for Stephaan or Laurine. Okay, thank you. If that's not the case, we will wrap up. Once again, thank you for the ones who are still there, and have a nice and sunny day. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.